The Gentry name goes back further than any of us can rightly remember. We are told, and I believe it true, that our people first took root in Brightlingsea on the Essex coast in the time of Edward III. Robert Gentry. A fisherman, or so the stories say. A man who pulled his living from the estuary and gave thanks for it in the stone church on the hill. That was near 300 years before my time, but the land remembers, even when the people forget. Across those centuries, the family moved, slowly as families do, inland, away from the sea. From Brightlingsea to Linsell, from Linsell to Thaxted, each generation a few miles further from the coast, each one planting themselves in a new parish, building a life around a different church, a different market, a different stretch of road. By my father Samuel's time, we were in Thaxted, and by mine, Kelvedon, a small town on the old Roman road, the King's Highway they called it. You could stand on the high street and watch the coaches pass between Chelmsford and Colchester. The Angel Inn, St Mary's Church, thatched roofs and mud lanes, and the smell of horses and hay. It was not a grand place, but it was ours. My son was born in the year of our Lord 1652. We named him Nicholas. He came into this world in the same year my father Samuel left it, as if God had made an exchange and expected us to be grateful. England was a commonwealth then, Cromwell's England. The wars were over, the king was dead, and we were free, they told us, though freedom tasted a great deal like obedience. Nicholas did not know the wars, but he was raised by men who did. I was 31 years old when Colchester fell, 1648. The Royalists had taken the town, just 10 miles from our door, and Parliament sent an army to take it back. 11 weeks they held that siege. 11 weeks of starvation inside those walls. The people ate horses, then cats, then the leather from their boots. When it ended, they dragged Sir Charles Lucas and Sir George Lisle into the castle yard and shot them where they stood. I watched the refugees come down the road to Kelvedon, women carrying children, men with nothing. The look in their eyes. I pray Nicholas never understood it, but I think he did. And before the siege, there was Hopkins, Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, he called himself. He walked through Essex from 1644 to 1647, pointing his finger at women and watching them hang. More souls were condemned for witchcraft in our county than in any other in England. The fear he left behind did not leave when he did. It settled into the walls. It made neighbours suspicious of neighbours. This was the world Nicholas grew up in, Cromwell's England. The Lord Protector governed, and the Puritans shaped the days. We went to church. We worked. There was no theatre, no Christmas feast, no dancing on the green. A boy on the King's Highway learned to keep his head down and his opinions close. And then, in 1660, the world turned again. Charles II came home, the monarchy restored, and everything we had believed, everything we had built our lives around, was swept aside like ashes from a hearth. The Act of Uniformity in 1662 drove our ministers from their pulpits. Men who had preached to us for 20 years, gone. Nicholas was 8 years old. old enough to understand that the adults around him were afraid. Then came the plague. 1665. Nicholas was 13. It started in London, as these things do, but it did not stay there. It crept along the roads. The same roads that had always connected us to the world now carried death into the villages. Doors marked with red crosses, the death carts, the empty market on days when the market should have been full. And the year after, the fire. London burned. We could not see the flames from Kelvedon, but we could see the sky change colour to the southwest, and we knew that the world Nicholas was inheriting was not the world I had promised him. By the time he was a man, in his 20s, England was crowded and poor. The population had doubled in a century. Wages had fallen. The wool trade was dying. Land belonged to men who already had land. The King's Highway still ran through Kelvedon, and the coaches still passed. But for Nicholas, there was no seat on any of them. I watched him stand at the edge of the road, and I knew what he was thinking. There was a way out. It was not gentle, and it was not free, but it was a way. They called it an indenture, a contract. You signed your name, or made your mark if you had no letters, and in exchange for passage to the colonies, you gave away your freedom. 4 years, sometimes 5, sometimes 7. You belonged to whoever held your contract. They fed you, they housed you, they worked you. And when your time was served, they gave you 10 bushels of corn, 30 shillings and a musket, and told you that you were your own man. 50,000 souls had made this bargain before Nicholas. 50,000 who looked at what England offered them and decided that Virginia, a place they had never seen, on the far side of an ocean they could scarcely imagine, was the better wager. Nicholas signed. I do not know the exact day. I know that he came to me and told me he was going, and I did not try to stop him. What would I have offered instead? Another year watching the coaches pass? The crossing took weeks. The ships were cramped. Men sickened below decks in the dark. The Atlantic is not a river, it is a world unto itself. Grey water in every direction, and nothing on the horizon but more of the same. For a boy from Kelvedon who had never seen the sea beyond Brightlingsea, it must have felt like dying, or like being born again. Virginia. Nicholas stepped off that ship into air thicker than any he had known, onto soil redder than any in Essex, beneath trees taller and older than England itself. They took his name. They recorded his contract. They assigned him his place. The New World, they called it. But from where Nicholas stood, it did not look new. It looked ancient, and entirely indifferent to whether he survived. He was sent to Fort Mattapony, a garrison on the Mattapony River, in the country the Powhatan people had walked for centuries before we arrived. A wooden palisade, a handful of buildings, the edge of everything the English had claimed, and the beginning of everything they had not. The men inside were militia, some soldiers, some servants, some both. They were there because someone had decided this river was worth guarding, and they were the men expendable enough to guard it. I imagine his first night. I have to imagine it because he could not write to me, and I could not have read it if he had. but I see it clearly. A fire pit inside the palisade, the smell of smoke and cooking meat. Men he did not know, sitting close because the nights were cold and the dark beyond the walls was vast. Someone telling a joke, someone else sharpening a blade. Nicholas sat among them, eating, listening, saying little. 28 years old, 4,000 miles from Kelvedon, belonging to another man for the next several years, but alive. And here, the fire crackled, the river moved in the dark, and somewhere back in Essex, an old man sat by a different fire and wondered if his son had made it across. Nicholas survived. He served his time. He earned his freedom and he built a life in Virginia. He had a son, Nicholas II, and through him a line that would stretch across centuries and across a continent. Nicholas III carried the name to Kentucky. His grandson, Blackston, fought in the Revolution. The family pushed west through Indiana, Missouri, Illinois, until the name Gentry had traveled further than any of us could have dreamed.